not? And sure, why not? Let's get started. So my name is Will Hager, and I'm a planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning that's been helping out with the zoning ordinance update. And with me to my right is Rachel O'Shea, zoning planner, and a number of other county staff are with us tonight, both at the HEB and virtually. And thank you for those of us joining us tonight for this public forum. But before we get into the focus of tonight's forum, I just want to go over a brief introduction. Staff prepared a draft ordinance to bring our zoning ordinance into compliance with the current comprehensive plan, and the draft zoning ordinance was made available to the public in May of last year. Joint work sessions and public forums have been held monthly to review draft articles and will continue through May of 2024. calvertcountymd.gov/zoning ordinance update is the website where you can go to access links to draft articles, see the draft zoning map, find out where to send public comment, and you'll also find other supplemental materials there. And finally, the focus of tonight's public forum are going to be draft Article 17 and 31, transferable development rights and subdivision. And so we'll begin with Article 17, transferable development rights. The purpose of transferable development rights, or TDRs, is to transfer residential density potential from eligible preservation areas, or agricultural preservation districts, to eligible receiving areas. The transfer of development rights furthers the conservation of natural and undeveloped areas as well as agricultural land, and the transfer of development rights contributes to balanced economic growth and coordinating the provision of adequate public facilities with the achievement of other goals. Transfer zones are designated by the Board of County Commissioners as areas where TDRs may be purchased to attain transfer zone density, which is an increase in residential density above what is permitted through base density. 5 TDRs are required per additional lot or dwelling unit to attain transfer zone density outside of town centers. In the draft zoning ordinance, transfer zones are permitted in the rural community district, rural neighborhood district, residential district, and the town centers. Currently, transfer zones are permitted also in the farm and forest district. In the draft, transfer zones will not be permitted in the farm and forest district. And also in the draft, no transfer zone is allowed within a priority preservation area. The map on this slide shows the priority preservation areas colored in green. And on this map, which shows the county from just about north of Huntingtown down to Solomons, you can see that the priority preservation areas take a significant portion of the land in the county. And so anywhere you see green on this map would be an area where residential density is going to be very limited. The base density for the farm and forest district and the rural residential districts, which would be included in these areas, is 1 lot per 20 acres. And in the current zoning ordinance, within a 1-mile radius or perimeter of town centers, higher residential densities are permitted with the purchase of TDRs than is permitted outside of the 1-mile radius or perimeter. In the draft zoning ordinance, this 1-mile radius or perimeter policy has been replaced with a reconfigured residential district in the proximity of Prince Frederick, North Beach, and Chesapeake town centers, and with the introduction of a new district, the Rural Neighborhood District, in the proximity of Dunkirk, Owings, Huntingtown, and St. Leonard town centers. And so moving on to Article 31, subdivision. The subdivision article addresses the following subjects. It includes provisions for the transfer of lots and the issuance of building permits, a section on subdivision types and growth tiers, provisions for exception lots and family conveyance lots, general subdivision requirements, and subdivision review procedures, provisions addressing amenities and improvements, administrative and amended plats, and review and appeal process. And just one slide summarizing the process for those who might not be familiar. A concept plan is submitted prior to submittal of an official subdivision application. The concept plan shows existing features and all ultimate development with respect to lots, roads, and other site improvements. And the concept plan review is completed prior to submittal of the preliminary subdivision application package. The preliminary plan provides a basis for the Planning Commission to grant a conditional approval of a proposed subdivision in order to minimize changes and revisions which might otherwise be necessary on the final plat, and the Planning Commission or its designee is required to approve the final plat prior to recordation. And we've added a section to this article addressing the state's growth tier law as it pertains to subdivision. And for those unfamiliar, designated growth tiers in the county are required by state legislation, and the Calvert County's growth tier map was adopted in 2017. But just first, a couple definitions. A major subdivision, in terms of residential development, creates 8 or more residential lots. A minor subdivision creates 7 or fewer residential lots. And so in terms of the growth tier law, in Tier 1, those are areas currently served by public sewage systems, and major subdivisions are permitted in this area. In Tier 2, those are areas planned for public sewage service, and major subdivisions are permitted in Tier 2 if they connect to a public sewage system. In Tier 3, those are areas that are not planned for public sewage service, and major subdivisions on individual on-site septic systems are permitted here, but the Planning Commission must hold a public hearing before approval. And in the Tier 4, these are areas that are not planned for public sewage service and where only minor residential subdivisions are permitted. And so to help visualize, this is a screenshot of the area around Prince Frederick Town Center. The red on this map is the Tier 1. The red with black diagonals is also Tier 1, but is not residential. The orange is Tier 2, and the light yellow is Tier 3, and the green is Tier 4. And so we've touched on base density and transfer zone density, but those are not the entire picture when it comes to residential density potential. There are also exception lots and family conveyance lots. Exception lots are bonus lots eligible for parcels of record as of October 21st, 1974. Bonus lots are permitted in addition to base and transfer zone density. Exception lots are essentially a grandfathering provision for parcels of record as of October 21st, 1974. It gives them bonus density and the ability to create a smaller lot, either 1 acre or 3 acres, than would have otherwise been permitted after the introduction of minimum lot size requirements. My understanding is that's why they're called exception lots. They were exceptions from the minimum lot size requirements being implemented at the time. So originally, a maximum of 5 exception lots were allowed to be created. However, there have been a number of downzonings in the county over the years, and after factoring those downzonings into the formula that determines how many exception lots a parcel is eligible for, most eligible parcels can create at maximum 1 exception lot. So exception lots are a grandfathering provision that has been around for decades, but it complicates the process of establishing the permitted density for a parcel, sometimes causes disputes, and is something that staff believes should have included sunsetting provisions a long time ago. So in the draft, the following has been included. Parcels still eligible for the creation of exception lots must obtain preliminary approval for those exception lots within 2 years of the adoption of this ordinance. 2 years after the effective date of this ordinance, the ability to create exception lots is null and void. And so family conveyance lots are also bonus lots permitted in addition to base and transfer zone density, designated to be conveyed only to family members of the grantor, being a spouse, parent, child, a grandparent, sibling, or child of the sibling. Family conveyance lots are permitted in the Farm and Forest District, the Rural Community District, Rural Neighborhood District, and Residential District. And family conveyance lots may be created from a parcel of record as of November 2nd, 1999. So the way that the regulations are written currently, the number of conventional lots may be doubled for the creation of family conveyance lots. However, no more than 7 lots, family conveyance and conventional lots, may be created. And that may sound confusing, and it is, but what that essentially means is that if you have, say, a 100-acre parcel in the FFD or a rural residential district where the base density is 1 lot per 20 acres, 100 divided by 20 is 5, double 5 is 10, but the maximum is 7 total. So all of that math adds up to 5 base density lots plus either 2 family conveyance lots or 1 exception lot and 1 family conveyance lot. So in their draft, there are changes proposed to the family conveyance provisions. And there are some county staff that believe that too often family conveyance lots are not truly being used to convey lots to family members, but instead are being sold to non-family members. There are provisions that penalize property owners who violate these regulations, but they don't appear to be an adequate disincentive. So the following provision has been added to the draft zoning ordinance. After the adoption of this ordinance, the number of family conveyance lots that can be created is limited to 1 lot per parcel of record. If the parcel of record has already platted family conveyance lots permitted under past ordinances, no additional family conveyance lots are permitted. And the following provision has been added as well. The creation of a family conveyance lot requires the purchase of 5 transferable development rights. Currently, TDRs are not required to create family conveyance lots. And moving on to subdivision control of unsuitable land. In the zoning ordinance, there are provisions that give the Planning Commission the power to disapprove the creation of lots on unsuitable land. In other words, just because technically on paper, the residential density regulations say that 25 or 50 lots can be created from a parcel, if the land is unsuitable for subdivision, you may not be able to create that many in reality. In the draft, we state explicitly that the Planning Commission or its designee may disapprove of the creation of lots if it finds that the land is unsuitable for subdivision or development due to the features described in this section. And in the draft, the following provision has been revised and now states, each single-family detached lot shall contain sufficient contiguous land for the construction of a building or dwelling with amenities required within the required setbacks of this ordinance. Minimum sufficient contiguous suitable land area shall be exclusive of natural resource protection areas, critical area buffers, forest retention areas, septic recovery areas, and required setbacks. Minimum sufficient suitable land area shall be 20,000 square feet for single-family detached lots having individual septic systems and 10,000 square feet for single-family detached lots served by a public sewer or community septic system. All proposed single-family detached lots below this minimum shall be considered having marginal amounts of suitable land for building purposes and may be required to provide detailed plot plans to prove suitability. The current regulation states that minimum sufficient contiguous suitable land area exclusive of steep slopes, buffers, forest retention areas, septic recovery areas, and required setbacks shall comprise not less than 5,000 square feet for lots having individual septic systems and 3,000 square feet for lots served by a public or community septic system. So the proposed changes here would significantly raise the standard for lots in terms of the sufficient suitable land area for development. And the following provision has been added to the draft as well. The Planning Commission may require a plot plan for review and approval prior to approval of the final plot. The plot plan shall show the location of the house footprint, amenities footprint, such as deck, swimming pool, etc., driveway, well, and septic, all required setbacks, natural resource protection areas, critical area buffers, forest retention areas, required grading easements, as well as any other existing or proposed constraints to site development. The difference here from the current requirements is that currently don't have to show a footprint for amenities, and staff have found that not taking these amenities into consideration ultimately creates problems for homeowners down the road when they inevitably want that deck addition or swimming pool, etc. and a few other revisions to this article to make note of. Regulations specifying construction standards for roads were not included in the draft and have been replaced with references to the Calvert County Road and Site Development Ordinance and construction standards currently in effect at the time of project development, and other provisions from the current zoning ordinance that are the responsibility of the Department of Public Works, such as provisions addressing storm drainage systems and drainage easements, were not included in the draft. And provisions from the current ordinance that address site development and design standards, such as sidewalk and on-site recreation requirements, are included in draft Article 25 and referenced instead of being repeated here. And another issue addressed in the draft is with the use of the term non-buildable residue in the current ordinance. Under current regulations, residue, the portion of a parcel remaining after a subdivision, is sometimes labeled non-buildable residue on the subdivision plat, but this term can be misleading because it doesn't necessarily mean that the residue is non-buildable in perpetuity. It means that its buildability wasn't evaluated during the time the subdivision plat was recorded. And so someone might purchase a property adjacent to a parcel labeled non-buildable residue on a subdivision plat, thinking that no one is ever going to build on that parcel because it's labeled non-buildable, when that isn't necessarily the case, and when they discover that, they can be quite upset. So to address this issue, this section has been revised, and the following provisions were added to the draft. If there is a remainder of land after subdivision and the creation of lots and or open space, it shall be labeled as either residue or as an outlot on the subdivision plat. Residue is not evaluated during the subdivision process for further building or development purposes. The designation of a property as residue shall not be construed as a guarantee that the future subdivision of the residue will be approved. Subdivision of the residue shall be subject to the regulations in effect at the time it is subdivided, and a note to this effect shall be included on the final plat prior to recordation. And so in summary, Article 17, transfer zones are permitted in the rural community district, rural neighborhood district, residential district, and the town centers, except no transfer zone shall be permitted in priority preservation area. And Article 31, sunsetting exception lots, revisions made to regulations addressing family conveyance subdivisions, strengthening requirements regarding subdivision control of unsuitable land, removed provisions that are the responsibility of DPW, and provisions addressing development and site development and design moved to draft Article 25, and the term non-buildable residue has been removed. And so that completes our presentation. We do have some folks with us in the audience tonight, and so we're opening up the floor to questions. I think if there's anyone with us in the HEB who would like to step up to the mic and ask any questions, that they can go ahead and ask away. If not, no pressure, but.
What about anybody from the?
Yeah, sure. If there's anyone listening virtually that has any questions, we can let them give a go at it first. Chris, is there anyone with us virtually that has a question?
Ms. Hooker, did you have any questions this evening? Ms. Hooker, you're welcome to unmute if you'd like to speak. It does not appear we have any questions, Will.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you, Chris. So one more chance for those of us physically present at the HEB. Any thoughts or questions that you'd like to share?
I know we'll submit some things in the next 2 weeks. Working with your other counterparts here.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like we've got any questions. So I believe we can move to the wrap-up slide. And speaking of public comments, the public comment period for Article 17 and 31 closes May 3rd. You want to get those comments in time so they can be submitted with the package that the commissioners review ahead of the joint work session reviewing Articles 17 and 31, scheduled for May 15th. And members of the public can submit those comments to the email address you see on the slide here. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact myself or Rachel. And I do believe that concludes the presentation. Thank you for everyone joining us tonight.